Well, Sheriff Joe Arpaio now finding himself on the other side of the law. A judge ruling that Sheriff Arpaio is in civil contempt of court for disobeying orders meant to stop racial profiling. The ruling could bring the sheriff a step closer to a potential criminal contempt case, where some think the potential of that could be fines or even jail time. Well, if you remember, the lawsuit was over controversial policing strategies that Sheriff Arpaio claimed were meant to crack down on undocumented immigration. Could Sheriff Joe himself end up in the pokey? Let's bring in our legal panel. Trial attorney Keith Sullivan and Fox News legal analyst Mercedes Cohen. Mercedes, let me start with you. This has to do with the court-appointed monitor of his department on this racial profiling. And the judge found that during those immigration raids that his department runs over 18 months, violated those orders, and now here he is in contempt of court. What do you think is going to happen?
Right. Well, certainly there's such a groundswell of support for Sheriff Arpaio because so much has been out there in the media that says, well, there's really crime that's associated with certain numbers of individuals within Arizona. So there is a groundswell of support. It's going to be a back and forth. They're going to have to look at what the policies and procedures are that the sheriff is implementing. And certainly he can show a lot of support saying, look, I've implemented these changes. This is the training I've provided. The fact that these individuals were arrested doesn't mean that there's actually racial profiling. These were individuals that my police and the sheriff department reasonably believed were committing crimes. So whether or not he can say to the court and have the facts to support it, it's going to come down to number one, what were those policies? Two, how was it implemented? And three, bottom line is, were these individuals actually committing crimes?
Well, you know, Keith, they say there are 190 of these people who they claim were racially profiled, and the county's already shelled out like $41 million in some of the cases. It could pay even more.
Yes, it's getting very expensive. Certainly the sheriff is going to find himself on the wrong side of the law here, and he, amongst everybody, should know that the law is always going to win. We do know definitively, without question, that he did violate the court's order, at least in one aspect, that he never conveyed the court's findings to his human trafficking unit. Now, that's the unit that was most likely going to come across individuals that they're locking up for illegal immigration. And he's conceded he never conveyed the order to them for 2.5 years. So that's certainly going to be a problem. But I agree with Mercedes here. He can certainly enforce, and the judge told him, he can enforce the state and the federal laws without question. And he's going to come into court and claim he's been doing that pursuant to well-settled Supreme Court decisions such as Terry v. Ohio, where you can do a stop, question, and frisk based upon just a mere reasonable suspicion.
So you're saying there is some law potentially on his side?
Absolutely, and I think as Mercedes laid out, he's going to articulate how he's been implemented and how he's changed this policy and the training that his people have undergone. The issue is going to be the judge's directive that you cannot stop or arrest anybody who you are stopping purely for the basis that you believe or suspect, or even if you know, if you have definitive, clear, convincing knowledge that they are an illegal immigrant, that staying in the country while you're illegal is a federal civil offense. It is not a criminal offense, and his jurisdiction is limited to state and federal laws and nothing else.
Well, Mercedes, what about that? I mean, what about this case that some of the stuff wasn't passed on, allegedly, and he can claim that defense? And there's this penalty hearing on May 31st.
It is. There is a penalty hearing that's going to come up. But contempt of court, I mean, there are severe sanctions that come with it. We talked a little bit maybe that he could find himself in criminal contempt. But frankly, as long as he has some evidence to prove that he didn't do anything contemptuous, that he did provide that information to his department, that he has implemented some training, that it's not that this department has.
How could you prove that if it apparently is happening? I mean, how do you prove? It's like I'm proving something.
Well, I mean, certainly he's going to say, look, Judge, I'm going to have all these witnesses. I mean, the issue about these contempt hearings is that you can provide either documentary evidence or testimony that comes in. So if there's going to be some evidence that's going to be confronting Sheriff Arpaio, said, well, you may have this information, Your Honor, but you don't have this information. You haven't heard from this particular witness. You haven't seen these documents. You haven't seen these emails. You haven't. So even though he has allegations that he's going to be confronted with, he will have the opportunity during the contempt hearing to show that in fact, he was in compliance.
And Keith, finally, I mean, look, he's well known across the country, probably one of the most well-known sheriffs ever, practically. He's got the prisoners in these tents. He gives them bologna sandwiches, gives them pink underwear.
Pink underwear.
You know, we know about the pink underwear. Do you think some of this doesn't reach the legal status, but does some of this enter into this case just because of his reputation?
Absolutely, there's no question about it. The judge's decision last week, where they decided they were going to hold this contempt hearing, is 162 pages. Just to put that in its context, Roe v. Wade is a 60-page decision. Miranda v. Arizona is less than 80 pages. This is personal. It's personal on both sides. The judge did an inquiry regarding Facebook posts that the sheriff may have posted about the judge's wife. The judge did private and personal investigations about the judge and his family. So it's become very personal. Both sides have dug in, but he certainly has some defenses. I don't think the sheriff is going to end up in the pokey wearing the pink underwear. I think he can justify his conduct and show.
Man, can you
Orange is the new pink, Keith? Is that what it is?
That's what it is.
Can you imagine that, Sheriff Joe?
Joe
I don't want
Arpaio.
to imagine that. I don't want to even imagine Sheriff Joe in his pink underwear in his own tent city.
Some say he should be the new Homeland Secretary.
Oh,
So
well, you know, we'll see how this plays out. He has a court date, and he's 84 years old, by the way, and guess what? He's running for re-election. Mercedes and Keith, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
Val?
Eric.